Sonichu. That name has become synonymous with several names: Pokemon, Pikachu, and Sonic the Hedgehog, to name a few. However, there is one name that stands out the most whenever Sonichu enters my mind: Chris Chan. Chris Chan is an interesting person. In fact, there are YouTube channels and a wiki page dedicated to discussing this person. If I were to explain everything about Chris Chan, then I'd probably be here all day. However, today's video will not be focusing on Chris Chan, but instead the comic book Chris Chan has created, Sonichu. There are a number of issues in the Sonichu franchise, but in this video, I'll only be focusing on the first issue, Issue 0. I know that as the comic book goes on, it begins to reflect more and more of the events that were going on in Chris Chan's life at the time, but there are some cameos in the comic book that I'm not aware of. However, that doesn't really matter though, because I'm not going to be critiquing this comic book as someone who is aware of Chris Chan in the Sonichu lore. I'm going to be critiquing this comic book as if I was a person who knows nothing about Chris Chan or Sonichu and I found this at my local Barnes & Noble or something. If you like my content and want to see more, then please support me by sharing, and subscribing. It really helps me out a lot, and I have several different type of videos as you can see on screen. You can check them out if you like. It'd be much appreciated. And with that out the way, let's begin. The first thing we're greeted by is the cover art. Based on what is being presented, you can infer what type of story this is going to be. It looks like it was made by an amateur artist, and I know that the art style will turn off a lot of people, but as long as the story is good and interesting, then you can get away with bad art. Heck, let's use One Punch Man as an example. Its artwork is nothing to brag about, and yet it's insanely popular. Now, let's examine what's going on in the cover art. To the left is a man with a Pokeball in his hand, and to the right is the main character of the comic, Sonichu. What I find the most interesting about this cover art has less to do with the art and more to do with the dialogue. The man is telling Sonichu to zap to the extreme, and Sonichu says, "I will. Thank you, father." Father? Well, that's something I want to learn more about. Why is this creature who is clearly of a different species referring to a human as his father? It's a dead giveaway based off of Sonichu's name and design that he is a mixture of Pikachu and Sonic the Hedgehog, so immediately this feels like a crossover fanfiction. There's nothing wrong with that, but let's delve into the meat of the story and see what we can unveil. Episode 1, Sonichu's Origin. For some reason, these comics are split into episodes. I'm not sure why that is, but episode 1 is the origin of Sonichu. But the moment we read the first page, we can see that there is a huge red flag. We get an exposition dump which reads, "Our story begins in an open field 5 miles from the city of Station Square, which is under siege by the perfect chaos monster. While Sonic the Hedgehog ponders over the destruction, a wild boy Pikachu takes notice of the far-off destruction." You want to give me exposition dumps as little as possible in storytelling. There's a rule which is widely known: show, don't tell. Instead of telling us that the monster is destroying the city, show us. Give us 2 or 3 panels of the monster destroying the city, and that would translate better than just telling us it's destroying the city. What stood out the most from this brief dump of information is that Sonic is pondering over the destruction of a city. Why are you pondering, Sonic? Shouldn't you be acting instead of watching the destruction of a city and thinking about it? There's also this oddly inserted speech bubble of the author. Chris Chan is declaring that he is the creator and author of Sonichu. It really seems weird to insert this here on the first page of the comic. It knocks you out of the story and would have been better to put this at the end of the comic book. Anyways, Pikachu gets closer to the action and witnesses Sonic transformation into Supersonic. Sonic collides into Pikachu, causing Pikachu to branch out into a new evolution. Based on what I know about Pokemon, this sounds like a reasonable way for Pikachu to branch out into a new evolutionary line. However, it gets a little more confusing how at the same time Pikachu evolves, a rainbow expels from him, and 15 miles away, it hits a girl Raichu. This causes Raichu to transform as well, but into Rosachu. But why though? Like I said, if you're someone who doesn't know anything about Chris Chan himself, then you probably won't understand the reference. But based off what I know, Chris Chan had this belief that there is a red string that connects us to our soulmates, or something of that nature. I don't think that it is ever explained in the comics why Raichu is affected by this transformation, or at least it's not explained in issue 0, but I theorize it's because that Pikachu and Raichu are soulmates, so since Pikachu evolved, it causes Raichu to evolve as well. Raichu's trainer notices that Raichu is gone and asks Rosachu where is Raichu. Rosachu says that she is Raichu, she just evolved when she was hit by the rainbow. Her trainer says that she is as beautiful as a rose, and Rosachu says that she has to have a new name and declares herself to be Rosachu. We also get this image of a flower called Zap Bud in the corner, which I actually think is pretty neat. And to be honest, in terms of coming up with the origin as to why Rosachu is called Rosachu, I think it's pretty good. Granted, I do think that the scene could have been handled slightly better, which I'll dig into in a bit, but aside from that, that's pretty much all we get. After Pikachu evolves into Sonichu, he's now capable of speech and teams up with Sonic to defeat the perfect Chaos Monster. We see some panels of the duo taking on the monster, and Sonichu uses one of his strongest electric type moves, which mostly all electric Pokemon have access to, Thunder. I'm a little confused though because it looks like Sonichu hit the monster with his Thunder attack, but Sonic says almost got him. So did Sonichu miss? Because that's what it sounds like to me. These next two panels also confuse me because we see Sonic and Sonichu flying. This is the only time we see Sonichu flying in issue 0, so don't expect him to ever fly again. We then see people going wild for Sonic. But why are these people risking their lives to be in this highly hazardous area? It was just stated a few pages ago that the perfect Chaos Monster is destroying this city. But maybe these humans were trapped or something. It's pretty much only left to imagination what these humans' current situations were, because the only time we see them is in this one small panel. They're never mentioned before or after this panel. They don't even have any detail or anything, they're just circles attached to rectangles and they're all packed together. After the battle is over, Sonichu talks to himself about his newly acquired abilities and how he is very similar to Sonic and is now a hedgehog. So does Sonichu have access to Supersonic? Because I assume that Sonic can only fly when he's in his supersonic mode. So does that mean Sonichu is just supersonic with electric abilities because Sonichu can fly? But I'm pretty sure this is never acknowledged again. Sonichu then declares that he is no longer Pikachu, he is Sonichu. We then get another oddly inserted drawing of Chris-chan and him narrating that Sonichu would go on to make new friends and enemies, stop evil, and to save the world. I don't think that this self-inserted drawing was necessary. A lot of comics have narrators and practically never have the face of the narrator appear whenever they speak. The only thing that matters is the dialogue. It doesn't matter what the narrator looks like, so in my opinion, this minor detail hinders the comic. So that was episode 1. It was only 7 pages long and I feel no emotional connection to any of the characters. We don't know the motivations of any of these characters and nothing truly was at stake. I mean, yeah, the city possibly could have been destroyed and in worst case scenario, Sonic dies, but who cares? I have no emotional connection or investment into the city nor Sonic. Pikachu wasn't even in that city prior to the story. He just walked up in there. We don't really know anything of what's transpiring in the city aside from the fact that the monster is destroying it, and we only focus on Sonic fighting the monster for less than a page. What's really odd is how issue 0 is split into episodes. Why not just combine all of them into one? It just seems really unnecessary if you ask me. The next 5 pages are used as a spreadsheet, and the first half of the first page is another big red flag. We get another drawing of the narrator, Chris-chan, and Chris is going to give us yet another exposition dump. The language Chris uses before giving us an exposition dump is rather tiresome. It reads, "As the creator of Sonichu and his world, I feel that I should take you on a trip to learn more. Besides, I promised my other hedgehogs as well. So let's tour my section of the cartoon world." First off, Chris has already established that he is the creator of Sonichu. We've already been given drawings of Chris, and Chris has stated that he is the creator, so it's pretty tiresome to have Chris repeating to us that he is the creator. The second sentence I don't understand. You promised other hedgehogs? This could have been removed. And finally, Chris says let's tour my section of the cartoon world. Aside from using the word my, I don't see anything wrong with this sentence. Using the word my comes off as possessive. Take that and pair it with the drawings of Chris and how he is hammering it into our heads that he is the creator, and it just makes him sound egotistical. If anyone watching this plans on creating a story, just be aware that you can do this. There is nothing inherently wrong with it, but it may come off as you sounding like you have your own head up your rear. The first thing Chris shows us is the title card. I know I said it doesn't matter if your art style is not that good, but I think if you have to make one thing look pretty, then let it be the title card. It's very hard to read because Chris wanted to make the word Sonichu look electrified. There's some shades of green mixed into the yellow letters and blue background, which I don't know if it was intentional or not. It makes it look a lot more sloppy than it already is, but had the name been readable, then I think it would have been nice to have some green shading mixed in. Chris says that he is going to take us on a tour of Quickville, which is the setting of Sonichu, but I hardly call this a tour. The only thing we are given is this incredibly small panel of his city, and doesn't do justice to make the city feel alive. We just see a few buildings and a sign that reads Quickville. It's very lackluster, and personally, I think it would have been better to not give us this extra bit of information. Remember, show, don't tell, and Chris is just telling us right now. Why not show us Quickville during one of your stories instead of telling us? I'm sure the audience would appreciate that a lot more than just being told that this is Quickville. However, if you really want to insist on creating a spreadsheet and showcasing your setting, then please take the time to flesh out your location. You can give us one huge panel showing us all of Quickville in detail, or you can give us a lot of smaller panels and showcase different locations inside of Quickville. We then get several info cards of some characters. The first is Sonichu. He's 16 and hobbies include running, surfing, and mostly outdoor activities. Some random facts are that his favorite colors are yellow and blue, which explains the title card, and loves Sonichu. Again, Chris is telling us, he's not showing us. If this was my first exposure to Sonichu, then you want me to feel connected to this story and its characters. Don't shoehorn character spreadsheets in the middle of the story. I want to experience what these characters are all about, as if I were there. But I can't do that if you give us spreadsheets telling us Sonichu loves Sonichu, even if they haven't met in this story yet. Put this at the end of the comic, that way I won't be spoiled. We then have Sonichu's info card. She's 15, hobbies include frolicking through the fields, shopping, and cooking. The final paragraph reads, her original trainer is a caring girl, Kel. Rosie is Sonichu's nickname, and she likes to pick flowers. Her favorite flower is the zapbud, which we saw earlier in the corner of the page, and she always keeps her heart saved for Sonichu. Okay, that's short, sweet, and to the point, no problem here, but like I said, this should have been at the end of the comic book, but not bad. However, now I think is a good time to talk about that scene from earlier where Sonichu declared herself that her new name is Sonichu. So in the character spreadsheet, it says that Sonichu likes to pick flowers. I think Chris missed out on a huge opportunity when Sonichu transformed. When Kel says you're as pretty as a rose, why not add an extra panel of Sonichu crouching down to pick a rose and say something like, as a rose, I like that, call me Sonichu. That would have been so much more effective than just drawing a zapbud with no background. Yeah, it's a little nice that a zapbud is there with Sonichu's name in it because it symbolizes that Sonichu and Sonichu love each other, but I think the idea that I presented would have been better. Actually, you can keep the zapbud in there, just add a few more extra panels. It conveys the message that Sonichu likes to pick flowers, it may even explain why she likes flowers, and it just adds an extra layer of nuance as to why Sonichu decided to name herself that. We then get 3 more info cards, but they're practically irrelevant. Kel is Sonichu's Pokemon trainer, we already know that. Nate Cirque is the son of Team Rocket's boss, Giovanni. Black Sonichu is a clone of Sonichu mixed with a dose of cherry cola. Okay, that's really random, but I would be lying if I said that didn't capture my attention. We get another page revealing even more info cards and an exhausting exposition dump. Releasing from a rainbow of chaos energy were 5 eggs, each containing their own variation of an electric hedgehog. It's really unnecessary to read each individual info card, but all you need to know is that each of them possesses a second typing, being psychic, fighting, grass, water, and flying. Somebody, be it a Pokemon or human, raised them, and when they come together they form the chaotic combo. That's all you need to know, but they should have been removed from this comic because they don't even make an appearance. There's also Flame the Sunbird, who honestly has me lost. I don't know who this is, and they're probably the most boring of the characters that are being showcased. Then we get Chris Chan Sonichu, Sarah May Sonichu, and Wesley Sonichu. All 3 read, of mysterious origin. 3 more electric hedgehog Pokemon will rock Quickville. As a reader, this genuinely just frustrates me. We were introduced to 2 Sonichu Pokemon in story, and now 9 more are being info dumped onto us, and 6 of them don't even appear in issue 0. how can you expect me to care about these characters when you're just laying out information? You can't expect me to be invested into all of them. Presenting them in the story and making it feel organic makes these characters feel more alive. It's hard for me to care about them at this point in time because when I look at them, all I see is a 2D drawing. Lastly, there's these two villains and Chris Chan. Chris lays out a lot of information about himself, but I just don't really care that much. When I read a story, I want to read the story, and if the creator has some extra details at the end of the book about themselves, then perhaps I'll check it out, because if I like their story, then perhaps I'll want to learn more about the author. If I were reading a book and somebody put in the middle of the story a little info card about themselves, then perhaps that would turn me off and probably stop me from continue reading. We're then introduced to episode 2. It begins with Sonichu wandering and starving to death. His bigger body now requires more food, and his previous diet doesn't cut it. Sonichu also says that he is feeling lonesome, and this right here is the central theme of this episode. He spots Rosachu and appears to instantly fall in love with her. She looks like she is staring at the lake, but I think this is another missed opportunity. It says in the spreadsheet that Rosachu likes to pick flowers, so why not have her picking flowers instead of just gazing at nature? I know it's a minor nitpick, but it's the minor details that make characters feel more alive. Rosachu takes her leave, but Sonichu follows her. She's not even aware of this, so this makes Sonichu feel kind of like a predator. It doesn't help that he says, "So she lives in that cabin, huh? And with her trainer. Maybe I can get a bite as well." I know Chris nor Sonichu didn't have any ill intentions, but the fact that this is overlooked is really bothersome. Rosachu also feels lonesome because there is no other Pokemon like her to love. So why does Rosachu feel like she needs to love someone? Did she feel like she needed to love someone when she was a Raichu? Or did she love another Pokemon as a Raichu but figured it wouldn't work out because she is now a Rosachu? Sonichu feeling lonesome I can understand because he's just wandering by himself. Rosachu at least has a trainer and a couple of the Pokemon to associate with. It gets even stranger because Kel suggests why not date her Dragonite, but Rosachu says that the problem is that Dragonite is too big for her. Okay, so I thought it was the fact that you can speak and other Pokemon can't, which made it difficult for you to find love. But it's not. And Rosachu says that Kel can have Dragonite instead. So in the Sonichu comic, it sounds like that humans and Pokemon have intimate relationships. So what exactly is it that you want, Rosachu? What do you mean someone like you? Because it sounds like you are open to the idea of dating other Pokemon that are of a different species. And it's not like it's that strange considering that Pokemon do that in the actual series. Kel then says, "Who knows, your love can be right around the corner or at the door." And as she says that, Sonichu knocks on the door and Rosachu goes to answer it. Sonichu is hungry and asks for food, and Rosachu thinks he is handsome and just like her. So she wants to learn more about him. Okay, so I think I identified what Rosachu means when she says someone like her. She means that she exclusively wants to date only electric hedgehog Pokemon because they are the exact same as her. But that conflicts what was said earlier because the problem with Dragonite was that Dragonite was not like Rosachu. It was that Dragonite was too big for her. But I really don't know. I'm getting confused, but let's continue. The two instantly fall in love with each other. They know next to nothing about each other, but I guess it's love at first sight. They say some pretty cheesy lines if you ask me, and Kel is soon introduced to Sonichu. Kel is happy for Rosachu because Rosachu is no longer sad, but come on, this is just too quick. Kel even goes as far to tell Rosachu to entertain her new boyfriend, and I don't think she was teasing her when she said this. It really feels like that this was supposed to be a serious moment, but come on, that's just too fast. They literally just met seconds ago and they're already in love and starting to date? We're told a few days pass and Sonichu and Rosachu are holding hands at night. They say some more lines that you hear in a cheesy romantic movie, which feels really forced because we're not shown these two characters spending time together beforehand, not even a montage. They just love each other a lot apparently. The two kiss and fireworks set off when that occurs, and the episode is over. I will say that I like how there is an issue presented at the beginning of the story. It is that both Sonichu and Rosachu feel alone, and by the end of the story, they manage to overcome that feeling of loneliness and are now in love with each other. I don't have a problem with someone writing a story about people feeling alone. In fact, I think that is an actual issue in our modern day, and we should do what we can to fix that. I'm actually fully on board with this story about loneliness being an issue and trying to overcome that. However, What I do have an issue with is how in this story, everything doesn't feel organic and presents the idea that a way to fix feeling lonely is by instantly falling in love with your soulmate. Realistically, that never happens, and I don't think it translates well to an audience by saying Sonichu and Rosachu's loneliness was fixed the moment they laid eyes on one another and because they're the same. Even so, I can't just find myself to care about their relationship because of how quick-paced everything is. They meet, we get a page of them flirting with each other, and then the next page we are supposed to care that they are madly in love with each other. What these stories need is to delve into the minds of these characters. So far, they've all been very blunt and one-dimensional. What this episode needed was an incentive to make Sonichu and Rosachu's love feel real instead of just saying they are madly in love with each other. Sonichu's hobbies include outdoor activities, and Rosachu likes to pick flowers. Why wasn't there a scene of them exploring the outdoors and Rosachu finds a zapbud and it reminds her of Sonichu, which is why zapbuds are her favorite flower? I would have been satisfied with at least one page showcasing a montage of Sonichu and Rosachu exploring the outdoors. Or even better, why not have them explore the outdoors and they run into a villain that they have to defeat together? I think that would have strengthened their bond and make their lives feel more real. We're then greeted by another one of these advertisements. Sonichu is a Pokemon, so catch him on the Game Boy Advance. Again, we don't really need this shoehorned in advertisement in the middle of the story, and Sonichu is not a canonical Pokemon. Had I not known of Sonichu beforehand, then I would have been astonished by this page and looked it up. This page doesn't need to exist because Sonichu is not an actual Pokemon, nor does he have his own video game. It doesn't feel like an advertisement for us. It feels like an advertisement for Nintendo and to make them Sonichu an actual character in their franchise. The third story begins with Sonichu battling Natesirk, but before we get to see any of the action, Sonichu recounts the events leading up to this moment. Apparently, Kel had to run errands and entrusted Rosachu to Sonichu. They go to the mall and Rosachu goes on a shopping spree. However, Kel entrusted Sonichu to ensure Rosachu doesn't spend more than $100 on her credit card. However, by the looks of it, it seems that Rosachu spent more than she was supposed to. Sonichu says that it was easy at first, but all the sales and coupons made it hard for her to resist spending money, and he is carrying around a lot of her luggage. There's this random panel of these two eating, and Sonichu says he hates pickles, and then Natesirk's Pokemon, Zapdos, appears and kidnaps Rosachu. Which brings us to where we are now. Sonichu is having a battle with Zapdos. It's not really that interesting from a storytelling perspective because based off of the previous two episodes, I can predict that Rosachu is going to be saved. But before she is saved, Sonichu uses some Pokemon moves to fight Zapdos, and then he does a countdown before he unleashes his final attack. He starts from 10, and each panel showcases him counting down one number at a time. As he's counting down, he frees Rosachu, and then in the corner we see him go from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. This is really underwhelming. People do countdowns because something grand is about to occur, and you want to emphasize what is about to occur. If you're going to do a countdown and showcase some sort of action with each passing number, then follow through with it. Don't just compile half of the numbers into a single panel. I speculate that Chris didn't feel like drawing the rest of the panels, so he put them together. Or better yet, just start from 5 instead of 10. That way you don't have to draw twice the amount of panels, and you get the same message across. Natesirk flees and the crowd goes wild for Sonichu, but where are you looking, Sonichu? The crowd is to your right, not to your left. And I don't like how Natesirk was handled. He just shows up and he kidnaps Rosachu. Why? Well, I guess it's because Team Rocket kidnaps Pokemon for a living. But what distinguishes Natesirk from Team Rocket members like Jesse or James? What makes him different from a Team Rocket grunt because he certainly has the personality of one? The only reason Sonichu and Rosachu were at the mall is because Kel had to run errands. Or is Kel at the mall with them because we do see them heading in the same direction? But where was Kel when Rosachu was abducted? She has a Dragonite, so she could have helped out. Also, where did Chris come from? And the people? It's like the perfect chaos monster all over again. They only appear just to praise the characters. A few of the people should have been added into the background of the panels when Sonichu and Rosachu were shopping. It would have made at least the place feel more alive. We then have an epilogue page of Sonichu and Chris Chan breaking the fourth wall. They both acknowledge that this is Chris Chan's finest piece of art yet. Sonichu refers to Chris as his father, but this is the first time we've seen them interact with one another. Why is Sonichu calling Chris his father? That is a question that I wanted answered, but I'm not going to get it answered. Sonichu was a wild Pikachu before he became Sonichu, so he had a no trainer, so how does he know Chris? I guess it's because Chris is the mayor of Quickville, so he shows up every now and then to congratulate Sonichu whenever he defeats the villains. The page continues to talk about how Sonichu is surprised that Chris is still single, and Chris says that he is going to go to the mall again in order to attract a partner. As he is driving off, Sonichu says that he's probably gonna fail again, but even so, Chris is still trying to do what he can, and for that, Sonichu is glad to have Chris as a father. This has a melancholy tone to it, and this page came out of left field. What does this have to do with Sonichu battling Natesurg, let alone the origins? This episode is over, and it now begins to transition into Chris-chan more than it does Sonichu. So those were episodes 1 through 3, however, there was no cohesion between each stories, and there was no depth, it was just events happening. And this does not feel like an actual comic, let alone story. This feels like someone had an idea in their mind, and they're compiling random events that are loosely connected with one another. Now that episodes 1 through 3 are over, we're introduced to classic Sonichu strips, which are essentially one-shots and about a page long. As the comic book goes on, you'll notice that the focus shifts away from Sonichu and onto Chris. This comic strip says 25 years later, so I'm assuming Sonichu and Rosichu eventually evolve at some point. Rosichu says that Sonichu is working hard, and Sonichu says that he can cut 100 logs before breakfast, but he already ate lunch. There is a wall I'm facing because I'm trying to piece together these comics. I'm doing my best to try and form a cohesive story in my mind, but what time of day is it? I originally would never be asking this question because who cares, but Sonichu says he can cut 100 logs before breakfast, but he ate lunch a couple hours ago. Is it early in the morning or later in the afternoon? Perhaps it was intended to be a joke, but the joke went over my head. I'm just going to assume that there is some type of pun in this comic that I'm missing out on. Here's another one-paged comic. Rosichu says she's getting tired of working so much, and Sonichu surprises her with a Valentine's Day gift. I don't know what this is because it is hard to make out, and none of the characters state what this is. What's more interesting about this comic is that Black Sonichu is stalking them. He has no dialogue, and Rosichu tells him to stop following them, and then the comic is over. But I want to know why Black Sonichu is there. Why is he stalking them? There's a black cloud over his head, so is he sad or something? I want to know, but it's never explained. We're done with 2 of the 5 classic comic strips, and like I said earlier, the focus shifts away from Sonichu and is now on Chris. Chris is on a love quest, but hey, at least we actually know that at this point in time because it was briefly mentioned at the end of episode 3. Chris says, "Since you won't leave me alone on my love quest," and Sonichu finishes his sentence by saying, "We have no choice but to fight." We see Marilee Walsh. What is she doing? I don't know, she's just there. Chris charges up an attack called the Kamehameha, and Sonichu is charging up his thunder attack. Wait, why was this technique never mentioned before? You see, this is another example of the comic already expecting you to know of Chris. If you do not know of the Chris-chan lore, then you're going to be scratching your head why he is doing this. So it just alienates your audience. This comic book was intended for people who don't need to know anything about Chris-chan, so why is this in here? And unfortunately, most of Chris's audience are not the type of people who want to read this story because they love the Sonichu comics, and that's it. They read it because they're invested in Chris, and Sonichu is an extension of what is happening in Chris's life, and this comic is an extension of his psyche. That's why they will read the Sonichu comics. They seem to vaporize Marilee Walsh and give each other a high five, and then the strip is over. The 4th episode is about Sonichu and Chris on their way to rescue Chris's mom from Natesurg, but Chris is in his transformed Sonichu state. Why? This was never explained, aside from it briefly being mentioned in the spreadsheet. However, that doesn't excuse that Chris is a Sonichu. This is an explanation that we need answers to immediately. Natesurg is about to blow up the cage containing Chris's mom, but Chris shocks him with a jolt of thunder, and Sonichu rescues Chris's mom from her cage. Chris's mom thanks him for saving her, and Sonichu says Happy Mother's Day, then the comic is over. Of all the comics, this one feels less like an actual comic strip and more like a 30-second ad. There's no substance to it, and to me, the main takeaway I got from this comic is to acknowledge Mother's Day. This is the only time Chris's mom appears in issue 0, and the only role she has to play is a damsel in distress. This was also uploaded around Mother's Day, so that solidifies it even more for me that this was supposed to be an ad. The fifth and final comic throws us straight into the action. Chris is already in his Sonichu form and says, "Mary Lee Walsh, that was a trap." I know that there is a common mistake a lot of writers make, and that is to start your story off in the middle of action. That is tended to be avoided because thrusting characters into the middle of the action can make it difficult for readers to understand what's going on. What did Mary Lee Walsh do to trap Chris? Mary Lee Walsh is arguably the most one-dimensional character of them all. We know nothing about her, yet for some reason she wants to ensure that Chris remains single. Why is she so invested into Chris's love life? This just feels like some more stereotypical Saturday morning cartoon villain. I know the actual lore behind Mary Lee Walsh, but like I stated, I'm coming at this as if I knew nothing beforehand. Chris is getting overpowered by Mary Lee Walsh's minions, then Sonichu and Sarah May show up. Where did they come from? I don't know. Are they at the mall? Was there a battle that happened off screen and the two of them are on their way to help Chris? Not sure, but Sarah May throws a bolt of lightning at Mary Lee Walsh and hits her pitchfork. It looks like her pitchfork is the source of her power because we see the minions power down or something, as if they were being mind controlled. I'm gonna assume that she flees because we don't see her again after that one panel. Chris thanks Sarah May for helping him, then Sarah May says that tyranny and oppression is against Chris's love quest. She also says, "Want a girlfriend? You got it, best friend." And the comic is over. So what are you gonna do, Sarah May? Are you gonna become his girlfriend or what? The main takeaway though that I got from this comic is that Sonichu is useless, which shouldn't be the case because she is a Pokemon, but not just any Pokemon, a Sonichu. She is comparable to all of the other Sonichus, but she doesn't do anything. The first villain kidnaps her, and she only stands there when the second villain is pounding Chris. We get another advertisement for Sonichu, but there's not much else to say here because we previously discussed this. But the only thing I want to point out is how the bottom text reads, "A Christian Chandler production." That's the author's name, and Chris has already asserted several times that he is the creator, and naming your production after yourself reaffirms how egotistical you sound. Lastly, the sub-episode. I unironically find the sub-episode to be my favorite episode of everything in issue 0 because the ending lacks self-awareness. However, I'll get into that later. It starts off with Chris feeling depressed over his love quest. It's been over a year since he first began, but he had no luck as of yet. It frustrates him, and what makes things worse is that he believes that the men are taking all of the potential interests. Also that the jerk-offs won't leave him alone, and he just wants to find love. We all know that these comics are bad because we are supposed to sympathize with Chris, but Chris does not do a proper job to make us relate to him. All he does is tell us that everything wrong with him is because of other people. However, Chris doesn't display to us that people are ruining his life. All he does is throw us into the middle of action, and we are told that these Saturday morning cartoon villains don't want to see him happy. If this was supposed to be satire, and the joke was that Chris is completely oblivious to the idea that perhaps he may be the problem, then I think that would benefit the comic. However, that is not the intention of the comic. A jerk-off approaches Chris and starts, well, being a jerk. He says he is sick of Chris complaining that he is alone, and again, this feels like a Saturday morning cartoon villain because nobody does that, and it doesn't help the fact that we never see Chris Chan on his love quest. We are only ever told about it. The jerk-off's underlings attack Chris, and Chris fends them off and transforms into Sonichu, and now we have our answer as to why Chris can transform into one. He's wearing a Sonichu medallion. This answers my question why he can transform into a Sonichu, but now I have to ask where did he get this medallion from, and why does it give him superpowers? This is very important information that needs some type of explanation, but it's never explained in issue 0. Chris has no problem defeating the jerk-off minions, then takes on the boss in a Pokemon-esque battle. After Chris wins, he tells the jerk-off that he's willing to forgive him and to let things be if he gives up. However, the boss pulls out a firearm and attempts to shoot Chris, but Chris blocks the attack and says, "Fuzzy Wuzzy gets you hugs, Prickly Wicklies gets you slugs. You gave me a slug, so you get my secret ultimate attack." I don't know if that's an actual thing people say, but it kinda sounds like jargon to me. As weird as it sounds though, I kind of like it because it adds more depth to Chris. I can't imagine a grown man unironically saying this to anyone who is not a kid, but Chris is a little unorthodox. But being unorthodox is not bad. However, what is bad is what Chris does after he says this. He hits the jerk-off with his Kamehameha, and a series of misfortunes fall onto him. First, he slips on a banana peel, then his glasses break, and finally an underling notifies him that his wife has just divorced him. She took all of his things, including his kids, and she lets him know that she has always loathed him because he smokes. Okay, I understand that the jerk-off was in the wrong in this case. He needlessly provoked a fight and attempted to shoot Chris, but Chris comes off almost as evil as the jerk-off. After he beats down the jerk-off, he lays a curse onto him, and he pretty much loses everything, so I can't imagine there is much to return to after he leaves work today. Yes, he tried to kill Chris and should be held accountable for his actions, however, that doesn't excuse Chris for ruining this man's life. Chris says, "I have cursed you with bad luck and extreme misfortune." So this man is going to experience bad luck and misfortune for the rest of his life. What's really dark is that the boss says he didn't feel a thing, and Chris says, "Oh, you will." Chris is drawn normally, but the fact that he says that makes him feel more sinister. And after all the misfortune falls onto the jerk-off, he says his soul hurts. And Chris doesn't even feel bad about what he has just done. If Chris were to have some redeeming qualities, then maybe I'd be okay with this, but he doesn't. All we know about Chris is that he is on a love quest which is making him sad, and that he is the mayor of Quickville. Now that I think about it, why is the mayor of Quickville spending so much time going to the mall or wherever else he goes to find potential soulmates? It seems like there are a lot of villains in Quickville, so you'd think Chris would be too occupied trying to keep the city running instead of looking for a girlfriend. I digress, so let's quote what Chris says. "This would not have happened if you had not challenged and threatened me, as well as not leaving me alone with my ever so frustrating love quest, calling me a lying solicitor, picking on my methods of attracting a boyfriend-free 18-year-old girl whom I can love and trust, and most importantly, handcuffing me on 9/11/2004 for no good reason. I hope that you have learned to never mess with a truly frustrated virgin when he is on a quest for a girlfriend to share true love and trust with." The way Chris presents his monologue makes it feel like this is an origin to his backstory, which sets him on the path to become a supervillain. This is one thing I'd expect to hear from a documentary about someone who is mentally unstable and searching for love. The monologue doesn't exactly give me the impression that this is something someone who is virtuous would say. I almost forgot to mention that there's this odd drawing of a Pokeball known as an S-Chew ball. It's made to capture electric hedgehog Pokemon, but what correlation does this S-Chew ball have to the sub-episode? Why not introduce it naturally into the story instead of off to the side? And that is why this story is my favorite of all of issue 0. Chris intended for us to root for his self-insert character and antagonize the villains, but Chris unintentionally came off just as bad as these goofy villains. Sure, they're stopping him on his love quest, but we haven't seen Chris actively pursuing someone and they stop him. We're just thrown straight into the action and are told they are stopping him. However, Chris shows us him laying a curse onto the jerk-off and ruining his life. The very thing Chris was trying to portray that is bad, which is people ruining his life, is now presented as something that we should root for. Chris ruins this man's life, and he has just done far more damage than he has ever done to Chris. And the fact that the comic is unaware of this makes it even better for me personally. That right there is the embodiment of what I find wrong with this story. There is a lot of telling us critical information instead of showing us. There doesn't seem to be like a set direction the story is heading, and the very thing that is supposed to be antagonized in the comic is also supposed to be okay, but only if Chris does it. This right here is the final page. Pretty much Chris is telling us that he takes great pride in Sonichu. I don't want to sound like a jerk, but if this is the epitome of quality that Chris can conjure, then these comics will never be successful in the sense of being able to tell a compelling story. He also wants Sonichu to become its own franchise. TV shows, video games, and merchandise, and the rest of the page is essentially him pleading for us to help him get Nintendo's attention so that he can turn Sonichu into a video game. I don't have a problem with Chris striving for his goals, but this page managed to convince me that he did not make this comic with the intention of it being able to stand alone. He made it with the intention for it to reach Nintendo's hands, and the only reason it was made for us is so that we can tell Nintendo for Sonichu to become a video game. In conclusion, The Sonichu comics cannot stand on its own. If you know nothing about Sonichu nor Chris, then this story is going to bemuse you most likely. The comic is split up into several different stories which are loosely connected, the characters have no depth, and the comic shifts attention from Sonichu to Chris. I think that one of the few purposes this comic can serve is as an example of what to avoid when crafting a story, so perhaps there is something to benefit once you read it. But that's gonna do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to see more content like this, then please let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, then please consider subscribing. I put a lot of work into the video and it'd be much appreciated. Anyways, catch you in the next one. Later.